welcome to 200 Riders Club. This is the garage that I'm working in now, and it's been, over the last couple months since I moved in, it's been a huge improvement in terms of like what I'm able to do, how easily I'm able to do it. I mean, we have a lift. Like, come on. Before that, I was working on the side of the road. So anyway, this place has been really great, and I've been doing a bunch of work in it, mostly off camera, a little bit on camera that might be in some future videos, but I thought I'd make a video now while there's no one else here and just quickly run you over everything that's happened in the last basically 1,200 miles riding this bike, kind of bring you up to speed on it. And I thought it'd also be a good way to kind of introduce you to this space, because I'm going to be, you know, just walking around this bike, and you'll see kind of the whole shop area, at least in the background, if not, you know, in use. So yeah, I guess let's get started. I have some notes on my phone here so I can get you up to speed, and then we're going to do a little bit of tuning up here on the bike. So here we go. So the first thing I did was actually I replaced the rear shocks. So if you remember, I replaced the front forks with Dr. ATV forks, which were stiffer, but mostly I did it just because the stock ones were bent. Well, once I had a passenger on the back, it just became way too squishy. It was too squishy with myself. I could sometimes bottom it out, but once I had someone on the back, I was just, every pothole, you would just hear a big clunk that it bottomed out. So I threw on the Dr. ATV rear shocks, which are also a little stiffer, and they were just new, so you know the oil dampening was still there. The next thing I did once I moved in here was I had lost a spoke, a rear spoke, broke or something, and maybe two even. So I decided to pull that wheel, obviously replace the spokes, and then while I was at it, we have a truing stand here, so that was great. I could actually get the wheel decently true. I'd never done that before, so that was another kind of fun thing to learn. And then I did the same thing on the front, because that had been, you can see, right, like when you're riding, you can kind of peek over, and I could see that it was a little wobbly. So anyway, I've trued up the front wheel. So those are chassis things. Running wise, the bike has been running pretty good, but there's been a consistent electrical problem. Or at least I should say, there's always been some electrical problem. It hasn't been consistent, but I've been pretty good about getting those solved. So one of the first things I noticed is that I had my turn signals on there, and every time I turned them on, when the turn signal would turn on, right, it would flash, the bike would almost completely die, and then, you know, the blinker would turn off, the bike would come back up, and so on. So same thing with a headlight. I realized when my headlight was on, the bike power dropped significantly and had a really hard time revving up. So I ended up just pulling the turn signals, and I'm doing hand signals now. It's partially a looks thing too. I think it looks a little cleaner, a little sort of more nimble without the turn signals on there. So pulled the turn signals. The other thing I discovered in terms of running issue, which at the time this might have been the only electrical issue, is that I didn't fully connect all my stator wires. So I was actually only running off of one, maybe at some point it was two and it came loose, of the 3 charging coils. So once I connected all those, suddenly it was like, oh my gosh, it's a brand new bike. You can actually rip open the throttle and it'll rev right up. From that point on, the bike is running pretty good up until the 400-mile oil change, and I did this, you're supposed to do it at 500, I did this a little early for a couple reasons, but yeah, I did the oil change, adjusted the ignition timing, adjusted the valves, just all those kind of like standard 500-mile initial like break-in tune-up. Yeah, and so then basically the reason I did that 500-mile oil change a little early at 400 miles is because I knew I was going on a solo camping trip. So I'll throw in some pictures here of how that trip went, and overall, and I'm really glad I did it. It was a lot of fun. I really pushed this thing. I think I did about 250 miles on this bike down to Wharton State Forest in New Jersey and camped there overnight, did some hammock camping, and got about 30 or so miles of off-roading, which was really good. I mean, it's super dry and sandy down there, and so if you haven't noticed, my air filter, this is pretty tragic, especially if you love original bikes. My air filter got all smashed up, and so I'll show you some photos of repairing that with ABS plastic. I had to use some different like JB Weld, like plastic welds on that. And the same thing over here with my headlight. You can probably see this white spot on here. That was also plastic weld, JB Weld, that I had to use. So, and you know, the down tube cover is in pretty good shape. It cracked a little bit more, and I just helped repair those with some ABS plastic on the bottom. Sort of did that thing, you mix ABS plastic with acetone, and it becomes like a paste, and you can use that to like layer up and reinforce plastic, this type of plastic anyway. So that was kind of a lesson in terms of like, this bike did actually perform decently off-road, but it just really took a toll on it, that trip, you know, not only aesthetically, but a little bit performance-wise, because once I got back from that trip, it had that running issue again, where once I would either turn on a headlight or bring it up to a high RPM, it would break up a lot. Like, you know, it sounded like, I don't know, crunchy, like, not like mechanically, but electrically, like it wasn't sparking. So I did a bunch of things trying to chase this problem this time around, because the stator was fully connected, so it wasn't that. I actually ended up replacing the stator, which I did like while my family was away, and we were in like this random Airbnb garage. So I'll show you some photos of that too. That was kind of a more involved job than I was expecting. But I thought, you know, I'll just replace it right when we get there. I have the parts, and then it'll be great for the rest of the trip. And that didn't end up really solving the problem. So after I placed the stator, I'm still looking for what is the electrical problem, why is it breaking up at high RPMs. So I checked the condenser, meaning I swapped in, we have other condensers around here. That's one of the great things about this shop, is that, you know, other people have spare parts lying around. So I swapped in a different condenser, the running problem didn't change. I checked, there's some other Honda 90s around here. There's an S90 and a C90 from that era. I checked the resistance of the primary or the secondary, I forget which one, basically from the spark plug cap to the ground on the engine, checked the resistance there on mine versus theirs, and they all kind of mapped out the same, so I figured it's not the ignition coil, it's not the condenser. I had a suspicion that, you know, I did that camping trip, it was 250 miles of like wide open throttle. I might have overcharged, because at the time I had an AGM, one of those gel batteries, and I'd read some things about, you know, those don't like to be high voltage charged for a long period of time. They, you know, they don't charge the same way a lead acid battery charges. Anyway, I was looking for anything, so I went ahead, I bought a lead acid battery. I swapped that in there. The other thing is on that Motobat, the 6-volt Motobat, they have no like reinforcement where the lead comes out of the battery. So it frayed really easily right around that point, and I think given a few more weeks, months, just a few more times taking that battery in and out, that lead would have broken off, and then the battery is just trash. And so I did not want that to happen, you know, when I was out on the road somewhere. So this lead acid battery has little reinforcement right around where the leads come out of the battery, so I feel better about that. Hey, so I'm just editing the video now and wanted to add that the batteries in these bikes are also the regulators. So they just have a rectifier in the wiring harness, which converts AC to DC, and then all that voltage, whatever's being generated by the engine, is dumped into the battery. So some people think that the lead acid batteries, they absorb the voltage a little better and kind of manage things better, whereas the AGM batteries don't really handle all that voltage, especially at the high RPM. So that's part of my logic here. But anyway, the lead acid battery did not solve the problem, and neither did the frayed ground lead that was on my AGM battery when I, you know, swapped it for a better lead on the lead battery. Still nothing. So this is all now in the same day. I did condenser, ignition coil, battery, like nothing's helping. So then I tried something that had been in the back of my mind that I had sort of forgotten about, and I was like, you know what, I'm willing to try anything. So I checked ignition timing, obviously, and that was statically, when you checked it, you know, turning the rotor around and with a testing light, it was spot on. But the point gap was at the largest end of the allowed spec at 16 thousandths. So I went ahead and narrowed that down to 12 thousandths, which is the lowest end of the spec. And while I was doing all this maintenance, I also thought, I wonder if one of my valves is a little tight or loose, and that's impacting my, you know, high RPM running. So I went ahead and my valves were both a hair tight, so I loosened them like way out to like, it's supposed to be 2 thousandths. I think I put them to 3 or 4 thousandths. I just thought, you know, let me at least test it. So then I ran the bike, came home from the garage, and it was like, wow, this thing is running great again. So it's either the point gap or the valves. So I talked to some guys around here, seemed pretty certain that it's probably the points. And what was happening is that a couple things. They're old points, so the spring was having a hard time snapping them back closed so that it could start charging up the coil as soon as the spark had fired. That was a reason to replace the points. The other thing I think is that even if the spring were snapping back quickly, the contacts are just old and corroded. So if it was snapping back right away, it still was having a harder time building up that voltage in the primary or the secondary, whichever coil it builds up the voltage in. So that sort of pointed me towards, all right, it's points. And obviously now I have looser valves than I need, so I'll get to that when I get to that. Well, of course, it had been now like 120 miles since I did that, because this bike is just so useful. I mean, I take it to school, I take it to work. It's just like, it's great. It basically fires up every time. So really, like, it's hard to find a day to come and tear it apart again and look at things, because it's like, hey, if it runs, I'm going to use it. Now, that being said, I did a couple weeks ago have a morning where I came out, I was late for school, and I started kicking this thing and it would not fire up, which is like totally unlike this bike. I've never had that sort of happen to me. So it was most likely, I think, that the battery had somehow drained some voltage overnight, but I also think that my point gap has now probably widened a little bit since I did that initial point adjustment like 120 miles ago, and it was probably just barely in a good place, and then 120 miles later, it's come out of spec a little bit and it's having a harder time running. Obviously, I charged up the battery just on like a battery tender, and I was able to get it down here actually pretty comfortably. I realized that I hadn't even checked what the gas level was at, and the gas is pretty low, so that could be part of it too. Regardless, it seems to be idling okay right now, but it definitely could use an adjustment. The valves are like very loud, and I'm missing a little low end power, so I'm going to tighten up the valves again. I bought a new set of points that I'm going to throw in there. So that's where we're at now. I'm going to go ahead and quickly replace the points and adjust the valves and just give everything a good cleaning, and probably stuff like chain tension, tire pressure, check the oil level, stuff like that, just to sort of get me back on my feet and in a more like secure spot with this bike. So yeah, I guess I'll show you a little bit of that, and then we'll go fire it up, and maybe I don't know, maybe I'll get some footage of me on my way to school, which I have to be at in about 2 hours. So yeah, let's get to it. Alright, so I got my new set of points here, and I actually went ahead, I got from Common Motor these points, and actually this Allen head hardware for adjusting the points, because these flathead ones are stripping out. Alright, so I think you've seen me adjust the timing before. There's plenty of videos about it online, so I'm just going to do that real quick because it's kind of a tedious process. You can see we got the new points on there, and they're looking good. And I got the Allen head hardware in there too, so that should be a little easier in the future to adjust. So yeah, let's get the ignition timing set. Then we'll quickly set the valve clearances and do the other kind of wider bike maintenance. Alright, so I just came back from school. It's a nice ride over there. It's idling a bit higher than it used to. I think it's probably just getting a stronger spark now. I can probably just adjust the idle speed a little bit. But overall, the bike's running pretty good. It's already looking a lot cleaner. I just went over some parts with steel wool and Brasso, that like chrome polisher, and sprayed a lot of it down with ACF 50. Should prevent it from rusting in the near future. There's still, though, some more things I want to hit as part of this tune-up. So I did notice, if you look right down here, there you are. I've got a broken spoke here, so I have some extras. So I'm gonna pop off the rear tire and get that replaced. I also noticed while I was riding, there's some like noises, I don't know, in the chassis, in like up here when you're steering, there's like a squeaking. There is a squeaking when you actually turn the handlebars left to right. I don't know, there's maybe some clearance issues. It's kind of hard to tell, obviously when you're riding and you hear the engine and the noises of the street, but I can definitely hear little, like, you know, rhythmic noises, like there's something tapping somewhere. So I'm gonna raise up the rear wheel and give it a spin, see if I can figure out what it is. I'll do the same with the front, and we'll go from there. So let's get started on the rear.
And the critical nature of the relationships.
So it's pretty hard to tell what's going on here. Obviously there's the noise of the chain like rattling when I spin it. But there's also definitely something, you know, you can hear some interference. Something is hitting something else. It sounds like a chain thing, like the chain's rubbing on something. So I've been having this issue. I have a little rock stuck in there right now. You can see in the kickstand there's a little rock in there. But I have that in there so that it doesn't kick up and actually hit the chain. It's been hitting the chain, and I don't know if that's because a foot peg got bent up or, you know, somehow something's out of adjustment. And anyway, my kickstand has been rubbing on the chain a little bit. So that could have impacted the, like, how the chain flows. I mean, the chain tension is in good shape, but, you know, if it got a little chewed up by the kickstand, maybe that's why it's making some weird noises. Anyway, yeah, I think I'll pop off the rear wheel and look at the chain more closely and see if we can learn anything from that.
City for this and this coalition around 3 times and are in the neighborhoods of the highest levels of poverty. Think about it. I mean, in New York,
Hey, just wanted to add in here now that I'm back home. I forgot to mention this in the video, but I added a little gob of weld here onto the kickstand so that it stops before it hits the chain. But I should also mention that this is a new chain because just about like the day after or 2 days after I filmed the update video and solved the kickstand problem, my chain broke and fell off. So clearly it had been worn down by rubbing against the kickstand for so long. You can see the wear mark there. So anyway, if you do ever have that happen, you definitely want to replace the chain before it breaks on you, because I got lucky, but that could have been bad.
I work with your father.
Sweet.
What you do?
Alright, so I'm just going through things on this bike. Attention the chain again, I gotta go and lubricate that. Got the spoke replaced on the rear wheel. I've gone through, I've like pulled some bolts that were rusting. These guys up here, the bolts down at the intake manifold, some other like little steel brackets and stuff that were rusting. When you use that Evaporust, which I used a bunch of when I was rebuilding this bike for the first time, it makes a really nice finish, but then it sort of flash rusts very easily. So I tried my best with stuff like Surface Shield or fluid film, and that works for a while and then it sort of washes away. So right now I'm putting on this stuff. I've mentioned it a couple times. It's called ACF50. It's like an aircraft lubricant that helps prevent rust. I don't know, some of the guys here at the garage swear by it, so I thought I'd buy some and try it out. So I'm kind of cleaning up some bolts and coating them in that ACF50. The other thing is I found this stuff, and since I did that off-roading on the camping trip, I've sort of wondered if this air filter is a little dirty and it might not hurt to clean it up and oil it again. So got the cleaner, and we even have some air filter oil. So I'm gonna go through that, and then just other, you know, general cable lubrications, brake adjustments, that sort of thing. And this bike is getting to be in a pretty good spot mechanically. You know, visually it still needs some work, but that's for another day. Alright, so it's already dark out now, so I apologize for the lighting, but I just gave the bike a good wash and sprayed some of that like turtle wax and dry stuff on it. I actually feel some raindrops right now, so hopefully all that ACF 50 and wax will hold up. Yeah, the work went super well today. I never mentioned this, but my Speedo cable, I think I didn't have it all the way up into the Speedo, so it was working, but eventually it was making a bad noise. That was the source of one of my front end noises. And it just, oh man.
The rain's really coming down now. So anyway, I replaced the speedo cable with one from a CB175 that we had sitting around. So that speedo works now. Obviously chain is tensioned and lubricated. Everything is pretty well cleaned and waxed or oiled. I did oil that air cleaner or the air filter. So yeah, things are looking pretty good here. I was having some wiring came loose in the headlight bucket, so I went ahead and redid that. Now all the electricals are working, and yeah, it's running really great. I just warmed it up so I could cook off any of the water that got down from my washing off the engine. So I'm also going to go run it, probably ride to the gas station, try to sort of run it really hard, get it nice and hot, and cook off any other moisture, and then fill it up with gas, and we should be in a pretty good spot. So I think I'm going to leave this 1200 mile tune-up here. I might try to take some nighttime footage of my ride back home or to the gas station, but yeah, I'm gonna leave it here. Hopefully soon I'll be getting to some aesthetic upgrades, especially with the headlight bucket and the air filter. But this was a pretty successful day of getting the CT90 back into comfortable working order. So thanks for watching. Oh yeah, and it was all your guys' intro to the garage. So if you didn't get a better look at it, this is it. Lots of storage. Got the shop space back there. You'll see plenty of that in future videos. So yeah, this is it. Pretty sweet spot. All right, thanks for watching.